1 2 1 2. Welcome to Beacon of Speech. What is Beacon of Speech? We are selling freedom of speech to everybody. Well, you know what, Ted? I don't know if we're gonna sell freedom of speech to the people in Great Britain because they are leaving the European Union. Do you think that's a good idea?
Do I think it's a good idea?
Yeah.
I don't know that much about it, but I would say yeah. Why not?
I'm Fred Hunt. Across the table from me is Ted Coley, who knows little to nothing about internal British politics.
And isn't afraid to admit
it. Well, that's the thing. In the world today, you have to know what you don't know, which is an oxymoron. But how many times have you heard that from the corporate America? You got to know what you don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, what are we talking about today? Today we are talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
We do our webcast from right down the street. If you hopped on the highway, which I don't want to give away where you live, Ted, but if you hop on the highway, which is, you could almost, can you see 480 from here? From your backyard if you're on the roof?
Maybe. It's about a half a mile from here.
If you hopped on 480, took 480 to 77, we could be downtown at the queue probably in 15 minutes, 20 minutes?
I would say at the most.
Yeah.
It's about 10 miles, give or take.
Our Cleveland Cavaliers, we are the city of champions.
Yes.
How does that feel after 50 years? Do you have an inner glow?
I told my parents yesterday, I said, you know what the first thing that I felt when that happened?
What's that?
Relief.
You know what?
You know what I mean? Finally. Yeah. Just to get that albatross from around our necks, you know?
Because I'll tell you what, and a week ago we talked about the Lake Erie Monsters winning the minor league championship, and that doesn't count, and nobody cared.
Now, was there a parade for that?
No, but somebody told me that they were going to take the Calder Cup at the Cavs parade. I don't know if that's true or not. But, and again, I can't imagine the Cavs would go for that. You know, the Cavs players. But the owner of the Cavs owns the Lake Erie Monsters. So he might...
Oh, that's true?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the guy is from Detroit. He buys the Cavs. He buys the Lake Erie Monsters. He brings a championship in both in the same year. So, but nobody cares about minor league hockey. Okay, so we're not going to dwell on that. But you say relief, and I agree. Because when I was a kid, I lived and breathed the Indians. I lived and breathed the Browns. I liked the Cavs. The Cavs, I didn't like basketball as much, but, you know. But after they're talking about the curse, I'm about 38 years old. And I'm like, you know what? If we ever win, I don't know if I'd ever celebrate. I'd just be glad not to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
And
that's what I felt. I mean, like I said, get that monkey off our back.
So I watched the Cavs game. Did you watch the Cavs game?
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody get shot in your neighborhood?
Not that I know of.
Because we're going to pick on poor Joe because he's not here. That's my gimmick, is I'm picking on Joe whenever he's not here. Okay? And we're going to retell the story you just told me because I thought it was hilarious.
That's how we roll.
Yeah, that's how
we pick on the guy who's not here.
Yeah, that's what Joe gets for not making time for us. But so the Cavs game ends. I'm with my son, right? And my daughter, she was rooting for Golden State because she said if Golden State would have won, then there would be less games. You see what I'm saying? If the Golden State, because Golden State was up 3-1.
Yeah.
She's like, I hope Golden State wins, so there's no more games. And then the Cavs won. Well, I hope Golden State wins, so there's no more. So the last 3, she was rooting for Golden State. And I said, well, you can root for the Cavs now because there's no more games. She goes, no, I'm sick of hearing about the Cavs. I'm mad at them. So she doesn't count. Okay? But the Cavs game ends. It's me, my 10-year-old son, and my wife. Right? Yeah! High five! Slapping hands. Yeah! Cavs! Cavs! Literally within 30 seconds. And I don't live 15 minutes away from Cleveland. I live about 45 minutes away. Okay? Cavs win. Count the 30. Fireworks. In my neighborhood. One street down, they're shooting off fireworks. If I didn't know better, I think 1 or 2 of those hicks were shooting guns. Okay? Go outside. The neighbors are outside. Did you see that, Gabe? 5-year-old kid, right, who lives 3 doors down, hops on his scooter, scoots right by me and my wife, wearing just underwear. He's like, the Cavs won! The Cavs won! I mean, it was joy, right? And I'm going to come back to you, Ted, and we're going to hit Joe Kaufman, too. Okay? But he's like, Cavs won, Cavs won. And I'm like, oh, you don't see kids, going down the street at 11 o'clock at night in their underwear very often. But we lit off some sparklers, and the whole time it was like 4th of July. You know how even though the fireworks for your city's over, but you still hear the neighbors blowing them off? That's how it was for the next hour. So, that's what happened to us. Okay? So, I turned on social media, right? And I'm going to go through this because there's a bunch of funny stories about how people celebrate. And then, like I said, we're going to get to you, Ted. Okay? I go on social media. My wife's cousin, who's the biggest basketball fan, he's like, he loves everything, blah, blah, blah. They were downtown at the watch party, but they have 2 small children. And he said, it's getting crazy. We got to get out of downtown, right? So they're, hey, we won. Let's go, right? My brother-in-law, who will remain nameless, but who's in the movie, he was, God knows what he was doing while he was watching the game, right? But as soon as they won, he's like, I'm going downtown. And so he was live. I was jealous because you know how we have trouble with the live stream? He took the live stream, hopped in the car, went downtown. He was going up and down the streets of Cleveland, live streaming people hanging out of their cars, like dancing and stuff.
But was he basically doing the same thing he did in our movie with the...
Yes.
Didn't he?
Cousin Dan did that. But Jeffrey did the same exact thing with his phone.
Okay, I was thinking it was Dan.
Yeah, but so he's live streaming, right? And then another one of my wife's cousins, he's like, you know what kind of party's going to be at the strip joint? He got in his car, went straight to Crazy Horse in downtown Cleveland. He's like, at Crazy Horse, best night ever, right? So I'm following it on social media, and it's amazing how everybody's celebrating. Posts are coming up every minute. We're here. Did you watch the game? Who's running into downtown, out of downtown, right? Now, I'm going to turn around. You live 15 minutes away. You could have hopped in your car. Were you tempted when the Cavs won to hop in your car and drive downtown?
No.
So what happened? Did you sit in your house? Did you go out in the yard? Did you talk to your neighbors?
I didn't. I just sat in my house and quietly celebrated.
Did you hear anything?
I heard some stuff. I'm trying to think. You hear cars going by beeping, and maybe some fireworks and stuff like that. But it wasn't a lot.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't really notice anything going on right outside.
Yeah.
Well,
see, at my house, that's why I'm like, holy cow! It is literally July 4th. It's the same thing. People are out. People are doing stuff. You know how July 4th nights, everybody's out, everybody's cooking out. You're with friends and family. So that's what it was like, and I thought it was super cool. Now, everybody's doing different things, and you did hear some stuff, but in your defense, because I'm unemployed right now, I don't have air conditioning, right? So we went outside just partly because we wanted to go outside, right? You have air conditioning, so for all you know, they could have been like burning Steph Curry jerseys out in the lawn. You wouldn't have known. But you were not tempted to go outside, and you were not tempted to go downtown.
No.
But you watched some of the news reports, right?
Oh, yeah, I watched, even after the game ended, I watched a lot of,
I'm still up at 3 in the morning because I'm like, they won a championship. I still can't believe it, right? And again, I'm still feeling relief, right? But a couple of people I know, brother-in-law, right, posted a few smashed cars, a few, not people smashed it, but they were on a cop car and it caved in. And, a few pictures of people on light posts and stuff. But not like L.A., you know what I mean? But I noticed that the stuff on social media never made it to the TV. I never saw it on the local channels. You know what I mean? It seemed like they were trying not to let out that there was just a little bit of trouble because of the Republican National Convention. Now, on Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't remember what day it was, my daughter, she's friends with the daughter of a Cleveland cop, right? And I'm talking to this Cleveland cop, and he said, I'll tell you what, compared to L.A., Chicago, New York, everybody was behaved.
Yeah.
And he goes, the few tiny little problems, and he was being very diplomatic. He said of the few tiny little problems, they were just drunk Cleveland knuckleheads, right? And he goes, that's my job, is dealing with drunk Cleveland knuckleheads. He goes, I'm worried about the professional rioters that are talking about coming.
Yeah.
You know, for the Republican National Convention. And I said, oh, yeah, well, we're thinking about going downtown tomorrow to go to the parade, right? And this is where we're going to circle back and pick on Joe. So he goes, he told me, he goes, the city manager said they're expecting 1 million people tomorrow. And I'm like, we're not going. Yeah. I said, flat out, I told this Cleveland cow, I'm like, we are not going to deal with 1 million people in downtown Cleveland. They don't know what to do with 1 million people. And I was right, because now we're going to go to the parade. Okay? So, the parade, everybody's celebrating. It was supposed to start at 11, but because the streets were blocked with with 1 million people, they couldn't even start the parade. The cousin who had the 2 small children, right, I was telling you about on, as soon as they won the championship, he got out of downtown. He waited for 4 hours at the end of the parade, and it still wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so he's like, thanks, City of Cleveland, for poor planning. Right? Now, again, I was watching it live on local channels. I didn't see any problems.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I really didn't see, since I was working, I was listening to it on the radio.
Right.
But I didn't really see any TV coverage. How did that look? Did it look like unbelievable?
It looked unbelievable. It looked like a zoo, like they were playing the game. How many people could fit into downtown Cleveland, right? But again, they're like, this is the best day. Here's LeBron. There's Deli. There's the trophy. But they didn't block off the streets good enough, so they had to literally push the cars down the street.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is the story that you told me. I'm gonna make you retell it for the show. There's 1 million people downtown, and it's elbow to elbow, people swarming everywhere. The next, not that day, not when I was watching it, and not that night, but the next day, I'm watching TV, and they're like, oh, everybody was so well behaved, and everything went perfect, except for those 2 shootings.
Yeah.
And everything went great. And I'm like, what did they just whisper? I missed that. They said that they were so well behaved, right? So there were 2 shootings downtown during the parade.
It was 2 separate shooters?
Yeah, 2 separate shooters. Now, tell me about the story that you told me right before we went on the air. And you got to... Because I couldn't stop laughing. That's why I'm like, we got to go on air, because this is funny.
Well, Joe the empty chair...
Joe the empty chair...
was down there at the parade.
Yeah.
And he was right there when that happened, and he said, everybody started running away from the gunshots.
Right.
And he said that one of the shooters ran right past him.
I'm sorry, I just can't stop laughing.
And I said to Joe, I go, so there's 1 million people down there, and you're trying to get away from one guy.
One guy with a... Now, but and again, they whispered it, and I hardly saw anything, okay, on the news, in the paper, online, on anything. He wasn't shooting into the crowd. He shot a guy, then ran, correct?
I think it was a girl that got hit.
Oh, okay. Well, the girl who got hit, he shot her, but it wasn't random. He was mad at him, her, or a friend, shot them, and then ran to they're not going to catch me in the needle in the haystack here. So it wasn't like the girl who got shot, she's bleeding everywhere running next to Joe. It was the gunman, and he wasn't killing people randomly. Yeah. He was mad at them, shot, and then was I'm getting the F out of here. I'm sorry, that's funny. If Joe was here, the whole show would be oh, how'd you feel? What kind of gun? What kind of gun was the gunman holding? So,
and Joe said he pointed, there were cops there, and he told the cops, it's that guy. So and I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if the shooter said the same thing about Joe? It's that guy.
It was Joe. We should have done a live webcast. If you weren't working, we could have done a live webcast that day. But that's why I'm there's literally a million stories because, like I said, they win and nobody knows what to do because it's so long. And like we kicked off, Ted, I felt relief. If I was 28, I probably would have hopped in my car and went down there too. But I'm in my 40s.
I will admit, like, during the day, when I was listening to that, I wanted to be down there at times.
Oh, yeah.
And normally I run the other way from stuff like that.
Yep.
But it was so historic. I mean...
And when they were I'm like, if they can just hang tough till the fourth quarter, to me, we got the best player in the world.
And
right?
I think it was such an agonizing game.
Yes.
Because it was so close. It was back and forth.
And you know what? They say those guys don't get nervous, but I'm like, I think they're getting nervous just like I'm getting nervous.
And you know what's funny? Like the last, there's like a minute or two left.
Yeah.
And I was seriously thinking about just going down into the basement because I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
It was tied at that point,
what?
and I'm like, you know what? I can't handle this.
I did not have that dreaded woe is me thing because, even going back against Michael Jordan, you're like, oh, Michael Jordan. We're playing Steph Curry, and again, he's a little guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How many times on this webcast have we talked about Johnny Manziel being as big as us? You know what I mean? Where he's not that big of a guy.
No.
So that's why I'm like, okay, I know Steph Curry's great. I know he can hit three-pointers. And to be honest with you, by Game 7, I was more worried about Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Klay Thompson, his dad was a champion with the LA Lakers. I don't know if you know, but Klay Thompson's dad is Michael Thompson. I didn't know that, from the Showtime Lakers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was more worried about Klay Thompson because, Steph Curry fouled out the game before. And I'm like, you know what? Last year, we were so shorthanded. They were cocky because we were so shorthanded. Well, this year, when they're shorthanded, we have the best player. We have a deeper bench. Your guy's kicking everybody in the balls.
I did not know that his father was Michael Thompson.
I didn't know that either because everybody knows Adele Curry is Steph Curry's dad.
Michael with a Y?
That I don't know.
Yeah.
But everybody knows Adele Curry is Steph Curry's dad.
Yeah.
But I didn't know Michael Thompson was Klay Thompson's dad, and I'm like,
I didn't know
holy
that
cow.
either.
I'm more worried about Klay Thompson. But that's the whole thing. It was such a relief, and it was so awesome. And like I said, if we pulled in, there's a million people and a million different stories. You know what I mean? All I know, people are like, I beat my wife, I was so happy, or, I didn't beat my wife. But you know what I'm saying? Everybody has a story. Everybody stayed up and then did something. Everybody did something different. Like I said, social media is filling up with people running downtown and running out of downtown. And then, like I said, I talked to people who were at the parade because they were at work, people who were at the parade because they just wanted to be there. They went to the parade, didn't get to see anything. Everybody's, like, in on it. You know what I mean? It, like, brings you together.
And you know what's so funny? They were talking about all the people who were downtown. And, like, even the people who were working downtown, I can't imagine that they got anything done that day.
No.
Even if you're inside the building.
Another one of my wife's cousins.
You're so distracted because of...
Another one of my wife's cousins. She works on East 9th, right? And Dan's wife. From the movie.
Okay.
And she works on East 9th, and she goes, we brought in, like, cake and ice cream to celebrate. And then the whole day, like, nothing got done because we have a window on East 9th.
Yeah.
And everybody's at the window watching the parade.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, there were things that had to get done, like daily reports, and you have to touch base with people. But she goes, and again, she's a female, so she's like, I had certain things I gotta get done. But she's like, some guys, I don't think they worked 1 minute during the whole day. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not trying to be chauvinistic, like women work harder than men. I'm just saying that day, she's like, there were guys that didn't even, like, turn on their computer. And it's funny, you get in there at 9 a.m. and you're not even watching the parade. You're people watching. You know what I mean? So, I gotta say for the record, I love Joe, okay? But I think it's funny that Joe almost got shot at the parade. Of all the people to get shot at the parade, the guy who literally Joe works 6 to 7 days a week. Now that I don't work there anymore, he basically works 6 to 7 days a week. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
I'd say
one
that's
day
fair.
that he's gone, needle in a haystack, 1 in a million shot that he's going to see the guy running down the street with the gun in his hand. I'm like, that's awesome.
I just picture that the shooter following Joe.
Yeah. Joe's trying to duck down an alley, and the shooter's like, that's a good alley. I'm just glad it wasn't an... And I know you should never say this, but I'm glad it was just like a dispute. You know what I mean? It wasn't, ISIS is like, oh, we're going to go to the championship parade. I'm glad it was just knuckleheads, just like the cop said, drunk knuckleheads in Cleveland. You know what I mean? I'm glad that's what it was.
I was talking to one of the other guys at work, and we were talking about, if a terrorist wanted to do something, that would have been a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what probably saved us? It takes a while for them to plan those things.
Yeah.
And they're probably watching the championship, and they're like, there's no way Cleveland's going to win.
Yeah.
So they probably planned it for Oakland.
Yeah. We're going to blow up the Bay Bridge. So that's why I'm like, oh. Okay, but I'm sorry. I just can't stop laughing about Joe. But I could talk about the championship for an hour and a half because we never had one before. People in Boston or LA, they're like, oh, welcome to Earth. You know what I mean? Championships happen all the time. Well, not for us. But like I said, I was relieved.
Yeah.
I was happy, but I wasn't happy like young Fred was happy. Like
no, it would have meant so much more to me if this happened when I was like 10 or 12.
Yeah, or in '95 when the Indians did it, or yeah, I remember being 10 and like the Indians losing 100 games like 6 years in a row or something, and the Cavs, was before Doherty and Price. They were horrible.
Yeah,
and I just wish young Fred could have seen it instead of like old jaded Fred. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm all fat and old now, So on that happy note, talking about fat and old, I want to talk about rock and roll, the business of rock and roll. Last week, me and you, we were talking about Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
Did you hear there was a verdict?
Well, one thing, I just want to...
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing about the Cavs.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's funny that, like, J.R. Smith, like, hadn't, once the Game 7 ended, I don't think he put on a short shirt after that.
That was hysterical. And online, I saw J.R. Smith shirts on sale, which were his naked chest with the tattoos on them. I'm like, I might buy that shirt. Whoever, I don't know if J.R. Smith did that on purpose to market himself, but if he did, he's a flipping genius. Mm-hmm. Whoever thought of the J.R. Smith shirt, literally, like, while he didn't wear a shirt for 3 days, they're geniuses, Ted. That's the marketing genius that ISIS needs to hire. The guy who told J.R. Smith not to wear a shirt, that guy, they made a crap load of money. So anyhow, Led Zeppelin. Did you hear the verdict?
Yes, I did.
Not guilty.
Yes.
Not guilty. Now, do you care? Again, you're not young Ted who loves Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I kind of care.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be found not guilty.
I wanted them to be found not guilty too because it seems like artists nowadays have enough troubles. You know what I mean? And the last thing you need is, Led Zeppelin is just not Vanilla Ice. They're just not. Okay? But there were a few things, like Rolling Stone had an article. It was the 10 weirdest things from the trial, the Led Zeppelin trial. Okay? Now, the 10 things weren't really that weird. But the one thing that you would get a kick out of, we're gonna play lawyer and Robert Plant. Okay? Now, you're the lawyer.
Okay.
I'm Robert Plant. Ask me any question you want about plagiarism.
Mr. Plant, did you and Jimmy Page plagiarize Stairway to Heaven? Is that
what? Mate, what year would that be? What year are you talking about?
The year that Stairway to Heaven was written.
I don't remember anything from the 60s.
It was 71.
I don't remember anything from the 70s. Ask me another question.
Okay. Had you ever heard of the band Spirit?
I vaguely recall something called Spirit, but I really don't remember much of the 60s.
We're not talking about the Spirits of Jimmy Page's house.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't recall much of the 70s. Ted, I'm reading the article, and they said Robert, because again, I didn't follow the whole thing. They said Robert Plant's answer for everything was, I don't recall, it was the 70s, or I don't recall, comma, it was the 70s. It was the 70s.
Now, was Jimmy Page using that defense too? Or?
No, Jimmy Page said, I vaguely recall the guys from Spirit, but, we wrote the song. I don't remember ever talking to the Spirit guys about it. He was a little more forthright, but he said, I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details.
Yeah.
All three of them played it's the 60s card.
Yeah.
Or the 70s card. But Robert Plant literally answered nothing. And they said, do you remember Spirit? And he's like, Spirit. Like he's trying, like the Spirit, the band Spirit.
Well, it's funny because that contradicts what I've heard about Robert Plant.
Right.
They said he has a very good memory.
Yeah.
And he remembers everything.
Yeah.
Like the way it smelled back then and...
Right. But, again, now, and this is the disdain we had. Me and you were talking about disdain. If me and you, and this is what we said at the last webcast, if it was me and you, we'd say, screw you. It's 45 years later, right? That could have been Robert Plant's way of saying screw you.
Yeah. Or it's basically pleading the fifth.
Right. Because the guy asking the questions was the lawyer who was suing them on behalf of the estate. And again, there is no Randy California, right? So they said, and the lawyer who was in there, I guess he was wearing like crazy suits and asking crazy questions. They said he was almost like a...
Wouldn't it be funny if he was wearing a suit that looked like the suit that Jimmy Page used to wear, with like the dragon on it?
That's the thing. They said he was almost like a super fan, and he wasn't acting like a lawyer half the time. Like, he sued Robert Plant to find out Robert Plant's mindset when he wrote the song, not to find out if he stole it from Spirit. You see what I'm saying? And they said there were farcical moments in that trial. But they said they got off. But yeah, my lawyer... Okay.
Is there any way we can see, like, were there cameras in the courtroom?
I think there were, but I never saw a camera. I only saw the artist renditions and the synopses, at the end of the day. But for Robert Plant to come out and say, I don't remember anything, that was a long time ago. If I had a lawyer, that's what the lawyer would be telling me. Fred, do you remember you worked at Taco Bell in the 80s and you got into a lot of trouble there. I'm sorry, that was the 80s, and I don't recall doing any of that. Whereas I remember almost everything I did, right? I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't recall. Do you ever remember you and your friends taking tomatoes and throwing it at cars at the... I'm sorry, that was in the 80s. I don't recall doing anything like what you're saying.
When you think about it, that is the safest response, though. Because even if you think you remember, you might remember it incorrectly.
Right.
And that can come back on you.
Yeah. So, but they were making, in the Rolling Stone article, they're just making fun of Robert Plant like crazy. Like, I think the end of the article says, does Robert Plant remember anything? Hopefully he has some good memories of the 60s. And again, I know it's the 70s, I'm sorry, but it was just hysterical. And they said it wasn't a hardcore trial. They said it was real light. There were a lot of light moments in the trial. And they said there were all these surreal moments. I'm like, you should never have... Basically, Rolling Stone was saying the case should never went to trial. But again, you never know what people's motivation is. The judge, well, I do hear 3 chords and, it was just a farce. But I'm glad they got off because you don't need to be pulled into court when you're a musician, especially 45 years later.
Yeah, that's. I mean, imagine that would be like me. Somebody taking me to court for something I did when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah. Do you remember eating Janie's paste? I'm sorry, I don't. My counsel says that we do not recall eating Janie's paste. But the reason I bring that up is how many times have we done this webcast and we've talked about musicians who love music but hate the business?
Oh, God.
Almost every webcast now, right? And part of the reason I bring it up is today, reading an article. I think it was on Consequence of Sound, right? Shirley Manson of the band Garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're familiar with Garbage.
Yes.
They did not have that many hits.
No.
They didn't have that many albums. I think they had 5 albums. Well, she's out promoting the new Garbage album, right? And I'm like, why are you doing a Garbage album? Literally, you've only done what Garbage was popular in the 90s, right? And then they didn't release anything for like 20 years. Why are you doing a Garbage album, right? What do you think Shirley Manson said?
We need the money.
She said, at the end of the day, the guys were all producers, and I love the guys, right? And I love to make music, but sometimes you have to step away from the music business. We were at a major label, the same thing. We went to a major label. It was all about cranking out, and compromising and doing what you don't want to do, right? And she's like, at some point, we made a boatload of money, and I just stepped away from it. And they said, is there a way that I could still be Garbage with, Butch Vig and the other guys, the other producers, but not deal with a major label? Well, now that we have an imprint, people know who Garbage is, people know who I am. She's like, we can do our own thing, and we don't have to deal with the record business. If you don't love the music that I make, that's okay. Everybody loves different things. And she goes, I grew up as a young girl in Scotland, and she's like us. She's in her 40s. The bands that I consider successful, you've never heard of. They're local bands in Scotland that I loved. And she goes, success should not be built on whether your album sold 20 million copies or whether you influenced somebody else to make music. And she sounded like an old artist. And she didn't have anything to say bad about her band members. She didn't have anything bad to say about, the artistry. She did make one reference about when you're a woman, you're self-conscious about being old, right? But everything had to do with, Garbage went away because of the music business. And I'm like, that's stunning, right? And so Shirley Manson gets a thumbs up because I always liked Garbage in the 90s, but I'm not checking them out now. Even with the interview, I'm like, I didn't like them enough to check them out. But, so Shirley Manson gets a thumbs up. You know who gets a thumbs down?
Who?
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel?
Billy Joel was talking about they said, Billy Joel, why haven't you released an album since 1996? Right?
Wow. It's been that long?
1996 he released an album about 8 years ago of music, like being a composer like Beethoven. But the last time he wrote music and lyrics was 1996, right? Now, if I'm giving Shirley Manson the thumbs up and I'm giving Billy Joel the thumbs down, why am I giving Billy Joel the thumbs down?
Well, I've heard Billy Joel talk about writing songs, and I don't know if this is the excuse he used, back
in the
then.
article that I was reading.
He said writing songs is painful. It's like childbirth.
Yes. And that's what he said. He's like, you don't understand how hard it is to write a song. And I'm like, well, that's true. I don't understand because I'm not a musician. Okay? And basically he said, like you said, writing songs is pain, and it cost them his marriages, it cost them his sobriety, it cost them everything. Well, guess what? Maybe you shouldn't have been a musician then. Writing songs is hard.
It's like being a garbage man.
Yeah, it's like being an astronaut and saying, oh, being an astronaut is hard. Yeah. Shirley Manson didn't say, she said, what sucked was the business. I loved the music. Billy Joel, on the other hand, is saying, being a musician is hard. There's lots of careers you can do if you don't want to write. And
you know who you sounded like when you said that?
Who's that?
Remember that Rudolph movie, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Island of Misfit Toys? Remember Charlie in the Box?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants to play with a Charlie in the Box.
Yeah, nobody wants to play with a Charlie in the Box. And so I'm reading this article about Billy Joel, and he's like, you don't understand. It cost me my marriage. Well, guess what? If you were a garbage man, no, you know what? I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to make you answer it, Ted. Ted, Billy Joel's a garbage man, right? And he's a garbage man for supermodel Christine Brinkley. Is she looking at Billy Joel the way he looks as a garbage man, saying, I want some of that?
No.
Is she walking out to her lawn saying, I want to get to know that guy better?
I picture her calling the cops and telling them to get that guy off my lawn.
Yeah, that garbage man is so ugly. I don't want him. So when he whines that being a musician cost him his marriage, I'm like, I hate to tell you, you were pulling way above your pay grade to begin with. And he's like, I don't mean to come off as a whiner, but you don't understand what a struggle it is. And, and this is one of Ted's biggest pet peeves. That's why I got to he didn't pull the 24/7 card, but he did say, when you're a musician, you never walk away from it. And it's like, and Ted, you were in a band. Now, I know that the band was work, right? But the reason that your band didn't succeed wasn't because it was like childbirth. It was because you had to work during the day, and then the band was like your second job. Mm-hmm. If you could have made a living doing the band, wouldn't you rather be at the band than at the job you're at now?
Ooh, I don't know.
Oh, you?
Is there a third choice?
Let me rephrase that. Okay, who's a good-looking girl who's our age?
A good-looking girl who's our age.
That you think is good-looking? It could be anybody. It could even be a local person.
Elizabeth Banks.
Elizabeth Banks. Okay. Would you rather be where you're working now or be in the band and Elizabeth Banks is your ex-wife? You got to bang her for 10 years.
Yeah, I'll take that. Since you put it that way.
And so, and that's another thing. I stopped reading it because I was so disgusted with the article, right? Mm-hmm. But Billy Joel, I guess a couple of years ago, him and Elton John went on tour together. And the question was, have you and Elton patched things up yet? I'm like, you couldn't get along with Elton John? What the hell is wrong with you? And at some point, me and you say this all the time, right? Billy Joel, at some point, maybe it's not everybody else. Maybe it's you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's so funny. Being a musician cost him his marriage. It's like, you wouldn't have been married to those women.
No way.
If you weren't a musician.
No way. None of them. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the first one was a high school sweetheart. But if I remember right, wasn't Billy Joel wasn't he making hit records when he was like 22? I mean, he was young.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if they were hit records, but he was in the business.
He was doing well. And
I think his first wife was his manager.
Yeah. So he was doing all right. You know what I mean? So, these hot girls. Oh, it's such a... Yes, yes. You are literally the dopiest looking guy in the bar, and you're pulling the supermodels. It must be quite the curse. My college roommate, when I was in graduate school, I was a college roommate with a girl, right? And we didn't date because I was a big dork, right? Well, we were friends, but you know what I'm saying. I wasn't a good-looking guy. She wasn't, like, tempted. Like, wow, look at that good-looking guy. She's like, no. She was dating the bass player of a local band, right? And he was ugly. I mean, he was flat-out ugly. And this is, like, in the middle of rural Minnesota, like, playing at a pub, right? And I said, you could probably get a better-looking guy on campus, just so you know. I wasn't talking about me. I was just talking about any other guy on campus. She goes, Fred, you don't understand. A guy puts a guitar around his shoulders, and they were just hot. And she broke up with the bass player because even though he was ugly as sin, I remember the name of the band was Uncle Fester. Okay? And I think we saw Uncle Fester play one time. But the guy was not that good of a bass player. It's not like he was a lead guitarist.
My geometry teacher in 10th grade looked like Uncle Fester.
Well, that's the thing. The guy was like 19, so by the time, or I'm sorry, he must have been in his early 20s, not 19, early 20s. By the time that guy hit 30, he was going to look like Uncle Fester, right? She broke up with him because every time she turned her head, he was cheating on her because I'm like, how in the hell is this idiot pulling all this tail?
Because he's in a band.
Because he's in the band. And I'm telling you, I don't know what that guy looks like now, but if he ain't playing with the band no more, he ain't pulling like he was when he was in Uncle Fester. And the thing is, they never became big. And if they did become big, what channel was Addams Family on? Was that Fox?
Oh, I don't know.
Or, I'm sorry, what company made it? 21st Century Fox? As soon as they're big, they're getting sued. That's copyright infringement. You know what I mean?
Addams Family.
But so...
That show always kind of scared me.
Oh, yeah. It was a thin line between funny and creepy. But so Uncle Fester was the name of his band, okay, Ted? And I'm looking at Billy Joel. I'm reading this article about Billy Joel, and I'm just like, you're Billy Joel. You're Billy Joel. It's like a loop in my head. You're Billy Joel. You're Billy Joel. And it's like all these... I've heard Billy Joel music since I was what? When was his first hit? 78?
Yeah,
82,
probably.
somewhere in there?
Yeah, 77 maybe.
So since I was 10 years old, I've been hearing about Billy Joel. And I don't think I've ever liked him less than I like him now. Because I was never a big Billy Joel fan. A lot of my friends were into Billy Joel, and I'm like, no, that's a little too soft for me. And they're like, no, that's like our life. I'm like, no, that might be your life, but that ain't my life. Isn't that one of his songs?
Well, it's funny. I remember Howard Stern talking about, Billy Joel and Christy Brinkley have a daughter.
Yeah.
And he said, wouldn't it be funny if the daughter has, like, her piano talent and his looks?
Well, that's the whole thing. And I know that's your biggest pet peeve, is the 24/7 people. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, dude, you're a musician. And you just said you haven't written lyrics in 20 years. Then why are you saying it's like childbirth? So that's why I'm like, you know what, that's enough of that guy. But I did have to tell you
No, if he was Robert Plant, he couldn't even remember writing songs. So he wouldn't remember.
Well, you know what? Maybe it made me wonder why Billy Joel was doing the interview. Because sometimes, I told you to watch the documentary about Ginger Baker.
Yeah.
And it was he's just a mean old son of a gun. Right? And basically, nobody wants to be around Ginger Baker. He's a real piece of work and, the whole 9 yards. But there's something authentic about Ginger Baker where you don't get the impression that he cares. You know what I mean?
No, it's...
Like, he doesn't... If Rolling Stone... Let's put it this way. Say I work at Rolling Stone, right? Ginger Baker, I want to do an interview with you. You can piss off and go die in a ditch. I'm going to shoot this heroin. By the time I get off the phone, you better be off the phone. You know what I mean? And it made me wonder, why is Billy Joel even talking to Rolling Stone? You know what I mean? You don't have to do the interview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Usually when you do the interview, it's because it's a friend or you're promoting something. I have a new album. Come listen to my album. And Billy Joel's, oh, no, I haven't written lyrics from it since 96. What the hell are you promoting? Did you run into the guy in the elevator and you're like, oh, let's do an interview? And you're like, okay. I haven't bitched about my life yet today, so...
Yeah, I mean, if Billy Joel isn't going to talk about music, what's the point in talking to him?
Yeah. Well, no. He's a composer now. He said that in his head, there's always music. It's the lyrics.
Oh, it's the lyrics that are the problem?
Yeah, it's the lyrics that are the problem because he likes to compose. He composed something this morning. It was probably "Do Stairway to Heaven" for me.
I can't.
Like, I'm trying to hear it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. But he probably was doing
have my
Stairway to
guitar.
Heaven. Yeah, we probably should get... Ted's got the guitar on the couch. Hey, Ted, get out your guitar. Play those chords. So... But yeah, so that was one of the things. I had to bring it up because I'm like, oh... I'm going to go back to the Cavs because I just didn't want to talk to them for an hour and a half straight. Okay? There's two more things I wanted to talk about relating to them. But let's do predictions first. I have been horrible with predictions. The first couple of episodes, we did predictions religiously, right?
I was wondering about that the other day.
Yeah, and that's my fault because I've been distracted. I want to get back on top of that. One of the predictions is 2 weeks ago, we were talking about UFC, and I wrote it down, but my kid spelled pop on it, okay? 2 weeks ago, we said there were three things we made predictions about. One of them was, would we care about the Monsters winning the championship? And you said... I think you said no, and I said, I care.
Yeah, I think I probably said no.
Yeah, so I still care. I'm still happy that they won the Calder Cup. The second thing was, somebody from Cleveland won UFC, and the question was, would me or you remember that guy's name?
You know what's funny? I just heard his name a couple days, because wasn't he at the parade?
Yeah. Yeah, he was at the parade.
I heard his name a few times, and I don't remember it.
You want to know it?
Yeah, tell me.
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't remember it either?
So the prediction was, would we remember that guy's name?
The guy, he's from Cleveland?
He's from Cleveland. But I said, literally nobody cares about UFC when it comes to City of Championships. Now, there's hardcores out there who love it. But Cleveland does not rally around athletes, in the Olympics or UFC like that. Right? So I was right. I don't remember his name. You don't remember his name. Neither one of us care. And we also said, were the Cavs going to win it? And we both said,
yes.
Yes. And we both were right. And I had a quiet optimism because, like I said, you can say a lot of things about LeBron being a jerk. But I had this optimism that someday we have the best player. That's got to pay off. Mm-hmm. If we were the Browns and we had Tom Brady, well, eventually we're going to win, right? If we're the baseball, if we're the Indians, well, we got Cal Ripken. We're eventually going to win. It's the same thing with LeBron. Part of the reason I was so mad he left is I'm like, he will win. Yeah. One day he will win. And that's why I was so upset when he came back. I'm like, he used up all his magic juice.
And that's the thing. The NBA, it seems like, you almost have to have a superstar.
If you don't have one of the three best players, you're screwed.
Yep.
And you can go back 20 years, Bird, Jordan, Magic.
Right.
Name a team that did not have one of the three best players on it. And everybody says the bad boys. Well, guess what? Isaiah Thomas is going to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Dennis Rodman, as much of a knucklehead as he is, he's going to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Right? So even those Pistons had two Hall of Famers on there. You could argue that Dennis Rodman was the best rebounder in the history of the NBA. You know what I mean? So maybe when the Pistons won, they only had like the 8th and the 12th best players in the league. But they still had two Hall of Famers. So I'm trying to think of when non-Hall of Famers won an NBA championship. The only thing you could think of is Houston, but they had Elijah Wan. He's going straight to the Hall of Fame. But he was the Hall of Famer. He had Drexler, right?
Clyde Drexler?
Yeah.
He was on Houston?
Well, he was on Portland.
Yeah,
I thought he went to Houston.
He may have. I remember him with Portland.
I remember him with Portland, too, but I thought he went and won. The point is,
Houston won it in the middle of Chicago's run.
Right.
Didn't they?
Yes.
And that probably only happened because Jordan left to play baseball.
Yeah. And Phil Jackson points that out, too. He's like, oh, yeah, those other teams, they should have asterisks. Because I think Houston might have won one and then San Antonio. But they had David Robinson and Tim Duncan. They're both going to the Hall of Fame. It's like, in the bottom of my heart, I'm like, if we have LeBron, we have a puncher's shot. You know what I mean?
Well, let's put it this way. This Cavs team, without LeBron, what do you think their record would be?
This year?
Yeah.
41-41.
Yeah. I think they would make the playoffs and go out in the first round.
Yep, I agree. Just like Miami.
Yep.
Now, Miami got some breaks, but it's the same exact thing. And I want to put it on record. LeBron did not come back to Cleveland to help us out because he loved us. That's what he said. But when he was in Miami, after they won the second championship, Mickey Arison, I can't remember if that's his name, the owner of the Heat, said, well, it's great that we win championships, but at the end of the day, I'm a businessman, and he was cutting salary.
Yeah.
The year that LeBron left, they cut salary. Like, one of the things they did was take Mike Miller, and they cut him. And LeBron said, why'd you do that? And he goes, I cut Mike Miller. I just saved $4 million. Right? Well, through back channels, I'm sure that Dan Gilbert is like, I will spend anything. Dan Gilbert broke the salary cap this year to give LeBron what he wanted.
What happens when you go over the salary cap?
Well, that's easy. When you go over the salary cap, they say, listen, don't go over the salary cap, right? There is no hard penalty.
So they just tell you to knock it off?
Well, that's the thing. They say, don't go over the salary cap. And then the top 5 teams, if they're over the salary cap, every $1 they penalize you $3. Okay, which doesn't sound like a lot, but so basically, say you're $5 million over the cap, and you're one of the 5 teams. The NBA says you need to write us a check for $15 million for going over the salary cap. Well, some people are like, screw you. I'll stay under the salary cap because all I'm doing is paying the league to go over the salary cap. Mm-hmm. Well, Dan Gilbert went over the salary cap, I think it was $25 million. Then he had to write the league a check for $75 million this year. Now, that's not right, but it was something astronomical where people are like, well, you can't keep doing this. And Dan Gilbert's like, well, I run a casino. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I print money.
Yes. But again, Dan Gilbert sees it as an investment. And the week before Dan Gilbert won the championship for Lake Erie Monsters, he bought Yahoo. I almost said Google. He bought Yahoo. I think he bought it for $4 billion.
So did the Cavs have the highest payroll?
Yes, by far.
Of any team?
This year, yes. And I think they said they had the 3rd highest salary in the history of the NBA. Because nobody wants to write that $75 million check to the NBA. They don't mind the $25 million on salary extra. They don't want to write the 1 for 3 check to the NBA. Now, if you owned a team, Ted, and the salary cap is $100 million, you spend $125 and then have to give $75 to the league, you'd be pissed too.
Yeah.
Right? But the owner of the Heat is like, well, guess what? I own the Heat, and LeBron, he'll just keep going to the bar, and I'll just keep making money. And LeBron's like, no, that's not how it's going to be. Now, he's going to say, I came back for Cleveland, but I don't believe that for 1 second. I think if the owner of the Heat said, I will bring all your friends here, and I'll pay triple this, because Miami's like, hey, we're gonna have to. The owner of the Heat said, listen, we're going to have to start paying some of this luxury tax. And LeBron's like, well, that's not my problem. And he's like, well, I ain't doing it. You know what I mean? So it's not as cut and dry as I love Cleveland, but I'm going to take the championship. You know what I mean? By hook or by crook, we got it. You know what I mean? Just don't tell me that it's all, it's like anything in the world. It's almost like you had to sell your soul to get LeBron back. You know what I mean? You literally had to spend yourself. Let's go back to Billy Joel, okay? Billy Joel was arguably one of the most popular performers in the 80s. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
If he was not pulling down just boatloads of money and one of the most popular artists of the year, would he have got Christine Brinkley?
No.
Okay? Well, in his head, he's like, I'm Billy Joel. She loved me. Oh, good job, dumbass. Well, it's the same thing as the owner of the Heat. The owner of the Heat was like, I got a basketball team. I got South Beach. Your friends are here. Where are you going to go? Right? He's like, well, screw you. I'll go back to Cleveland. They will spend money straight into the ground. He's like, well, then go. And then when he went there, like, oh, LeBron. LeBron, you're a jerk. Yeah, I know exactly how that feels, Miami. Guess what? You learned the business sense of LeBron too late. I can't remember if it was LeBron or not, but I'm almost positive it was. The first time he was here, they asked him about winning a championship, and he said, my goal is to be the first billion-dollar player. The first player to make $1 billion. And they're like, championship? He goes, oh, those will come. Right? And that's why I'm like, you have to present business. You know, you think these businessmen would, you know, he's not 18-year-old LeBron anymore. Now you got 30-year-old LeBron who's basically the head of his own, you know, brand. And that's why they fired Johnny Manziel, because they were smarter than him. They're like, you're fired. You're a dumb punk ass. Did you see what happened? Not to change subject, but did you see what happened to Johnny Manziel this week?
Wasn't he involved in a hit and run?
He was involved in a hit and run. His dad went to the media and said, my son needs to go to rehab. He's a junkie, and he will die. His dad said that to the press.
So his dad kind of pulled a Martin Sheen?
Yes. Yes. But don't worry, Manziel. I'm sure he's got tiger blood, and we're good to go. So.
Yeah, what do you think? Do you think his dad is exaggerating, or do you think Johnny Manziel is that?
The last, I saw a picture this week, and you know how he said he was 6 foot tall, but he's really like 5'9", 5'10". He's probably, how much do you weigh, Ted?
A lot more than you think.
Okay, well, we won't ask you. They said some estimates are that he's down to 130, 140.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, he's not telling, but people are like, he looks like he's down to 140.
Wow.
Which is, for an athlete, I mean, unless you're the Ice Cube McNeil, and he wasn't a junkie, he was just a little dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, athletes in general are muscular and muscle.
And they said he's wasting away. They had a picture of him. He was all bony and all tatted up. So.
Man.
Oh, but anyhow, so I wanted to get back to LeBron. So Miami can piss off, okay? They got the businessman LeBron, okay? Something else that pissed me off, okay? I'm going to show you something. And let me lean out, and then we'll do predictions.
And I also had a couple things that I wanted to mention.
Oh yeah, we'll get back to that. Don't let me forget. This is a Sports Illustrated from the week before the Cavs won the championship. What is this a picture of, Ted? Go ahead and describe it for our listeners.
A hockey player holding is that the Stanley Cup?
That is a Stanley Cup. That is Sidney Crosby holding up the Stanley Cup. Okay?
Kissing it.
Now, the Pittsburg Penguins, they won Stanley Cups in the 90s. They won one about 4 or 5 years ago. Sidney Crosby's back on the cover, right? Now, why does this make me mad about the Cavs?
That makes you mad about the Cavs?
Yes. How does this make me mad about the Cavs? It's a trick question.
Well, this is a week before the Cavs won?
Yeah, this is a week before the Cavs won.
Are you thinking the Cavs should be on there?
Well, no, but this is the trick. Gordie Howe died, right? So
yes.
I think Gordie Howe should have been on the cover. But the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, right? The Cavs win. The next day I'm on social media, right? One of my dumb-ass cousins posted a picture of the Pittsburgh Penguins with the Stanley Cup and the Cavs with the NBA championship. It said Region of Champions. Okay? How far are we into the webcast? How far? 1 hour. Do you think anybody is listening right now? Do you think anybody will be listening 1 hour in?
Probably not.
Okay. I'm going to break my own rule. Me and you try not to swear. Joe doesn't care. Joe will come in and swear all the time. Right? But I try not to swear. You don't usually swear. Okay? You fuckers from Pittsburgh. This is not the Region of Champions. You march your asses back to Pittsburgh when I saw Region of Champions, it made me so mad. I don't walk around saying, "Oh, remember when we won?"
This was
when
your cousin?
Yeah, posted it.
And where does he live?
Down by Youngstown. Oh. Region of Champions. Ted, do you remember when the Steelers won the Steel Curtain?
Yes.
We were not the Region of Champions, okay? They beat us, okay? The Indians, we have the Indians. I don't care that Pittsburgh's in the other league. I don't like the Pirates are not my second favorite team. Mm-hmm. I understand that the Cavs, as a business decision, market the Pittsburgh just because they don't have a basketball team. But I do not run around saying, "Hey, the Penguins won!" I'm a Detroit fan because my grandparents grew up in Detroit and there was no Cleveland team. And my grandparents would send me Detroit Red Wings stuff all the time. And I would go see the Red Wings play because my grandparents were there. Okay? That is not my Stanley Cup. This is not my Stanley Cup. This is not the Region of Champions. The Region of Champions. I'll tell you what, I wanted to fight my cousin. Okay? And they were not the only person to say that. I've heard other people say, "Oh, look at all the championships coming to the Midwest." That is not our championship. You tell those cretins from Pittsburgh to drive back to Pennsylvania. This is not their championship. "Oh, we won. The Cavs winning is not your championship. You march your asses back into the back-ass Hickwater Mountains where you came from. The Region of Champions. What a bunch of BS."
So you're saying that they're trying to hijack our NBA win?
Yeah, they're trying because they don't have an NBA team. They say a lot of them, they don't associate with the 76ers because they've been horrible for so long. And he said the Cavs is like their team. It's like they won a championship. No, you march your asses back to your state. You don't get to share in the Cavs championship. And my father-in-law was telling me, he said that they saw, not him, but he heard stories of people with Pennsylvania plates who came up to the parade. You get your asses back to Pittsburgh! You don't get to share in the parade. That's a bunch of bullcrap. We're the Region of Champions.
They forbid you to come to our parade.
Yeah, you know what? You're all uninvited. I don't care what LeBron or the Cavs say. I don't care. And don't get me wrong, Sidney Crosby's great. I'm sorry he had a concussion. You know, they probably deserve to win the Stanley Cup. Okay? But that's not my Stanley Cup. That's not my Stanley Cup. And Pittsburgh, they don't get to share our NBA trophy. They can piss off. So I'm sorry to swear so much, but it just made me so mad. I'm like, you guys march your asses back across the state lines. I'm sorry. I had to tell you. And I'm going to leave this here for you, Ted. But like I said, this almost pulled off my head. The Sports Illustrated, right here, how it doesn't say the Cleveland Penguins. It doesn't say the Pittsburgh/Cleveland Penguins. How the Penguins march to the fourth cup. And like I said, I love Gordie Howe, so I'm
That's their fourth win?
Their fourth Stanley Cup, yeah. The retooled Penguins down the Sharks. Yeah, the Pittsburgh Penguins, not the Pittsburgh-Cleveland Penguins. You know, the bunch of urchins down there trying to steal our NBA trophy. So go ahead. What were you going to say, Ted? You said you wanted to get some things.
I had a few things that I wanted to say. I have a question for you.
Okay. Oh, don't let me forget. I started talking about the predictions, and they're still here. Okay. So go ahead. Finish up yours.
First of all, have we heard from Trump's people yet?
Ted, I have not heard from Trump's people, and more people listened to last week's episode than any of the 20 beforehand, so I have not heard from Trump's people. They haven't said anything, and I applied for a job, okay? And
on Trump's campaign? Or?
Oh, no, for, I think it was ITT Tech. And I had applied for there while I still worked at Iron Mountain, and they said no, they did an auto-fail, right? So I changed the answer once I auto-failed the ITT Tech question. And they're like, oh no, this web address already answered it one way, so I put beaconofspeech@gmail.com. So I've actually been checking it out because I knew that I would auto-fail it, so I changed my answer just to get the interview. So, but yeah, so I even went on the Beacon of Speech website and checked this week.
Okay.
So I have not heard from Trump's people.
And also, is there anyone that you would like to invite on the show? Like Gary Johnson or...
Well, I wouldn't... Ted, this is so horrible. First of all, let me start at the beginning. You know I'm voting for Gary Johnson. This week on the Beacon of Speech website, I wrote an article called How Gary Johnson Wins, right? And while I was researching it, he said, you know, he ran for president for Libertarians in 2012, right? And he said, I was on almost every podcast who would invite me because I had no money and I would go on everybody's show. And you know how many votes it turned into? He goes, I'm not even sure the guys who ran the podcast voted for me. And so after I read that, I'm like, well, I don't want to be one of those guys. I want Gary Johnson making fun of me in an interview. But so I spelled out how Gary Johnson wins, right? But who do I want on the radio? I would probably want the first person I would want to ask, okay? And it's not a celebrity. If you tell me what celebrity, if I could have anyone, I'll tell you next week because I'll give it a good thought. You know, it would probably be somebody insane like Gary Busey. But my wife's cousin, the one who makes sunglasses out of records, I want to talk to him how he had that idea. Okay, because would you ever have an idea like that?
No.
No. That's who I want. I want to talk to people like the guy who makes sunglasses out of records and then sells them to people. Those are called rec rays. You can find them on the internet.
Rec rays?
Yeah, rec rays. You'll have to look it up, Ted. But it would have to be somebody like Gary Busey because Gary Johnson, at this point, I feel like he would just make fun of me. Like, this is like one of the podcasts I went to in 2012. But I still and I was saying it just before we got here, Ted. Just because Gary Johnson doesn't love me doesn't mean I don't love Gary Johnson. Okay? You should definitely read the article. Ted, I'm going to make you read the article because it's on our website. Right? And I still want to do an article about wasted space. So...
Okay. Now, are we going to invite Hillary Clinton on the show, or...
Do you think my wife's going to listen to this?
Has she listened to any of the other ones? Or
No. No. We are not going to invite Hillary unless we're allowed to ask her questions of a sexual nature. Because I keep reading that Hillary is a lesbian. Okay?
Yeah, I've heard that.
And that's why her husband, they don't care that he cheats on her because they're a power couple and, you know, what stays in the bedroom, you know, that's their own business. But I want to know if she is a lesbian. And then I think I might pull a Howard Stern and bring out a hot guy. Like, we'll bring out Lewis, okay? We'll call Lewis, say, Lewis, we need a hot guy, okay? And then tell Hillary... we'd only do it to Hillary if we could pull a stunt on her, like on the Howard Stern show. Because everything she has to say, she's said. You know what I mean? Hillary is not plowing any new ground to me. You know what I mean? So we are going to be unfair, and we're going to be mean to Hillary Clinton.
See, and the thing is that I'm thinking maybe Donald Trump is just waiting until the election gets closer.
Well, yeah, when he's scrounging for every vote.
To come on our show.
Because they even said Hillary has a war chest, and nobody is nobody's donating to Donald Trump right now. And he said he might have to spend his own money. Well, you said you were going to spend your own money. Well, it goes back to, well, I might have said it, but I don't know how much I meant to that.
Yeah, like I said before, I just think
if you would like to invite Hillary and you want to have a conversation with her, you can. But I don't want her voice.
Now, why did you ask if you think your wife is listening to the show? Does she like Hillary or?
Oh no, but she would say, "Well, Fred, you can't bring in a hot guy and ask her if she thinks he's hot or anything. You know, that'd be disrespectful to the politician." But I would tell her ahead of time. I'd be like, I just want to know if you're... I honestly, nothing you could say. Number one, I don't believe you, okay? And number two, you're not plowing any new ground. So I just want to know if you're a lesbian or not. And if you are, that's great. You know, you say... And this would be my second question. Are you a lesbian? Okay? She says yes. I said, well, that's good. That's good you're true to yourself. And I say, and if she goes, no, but I support the lesbian agenda. I said, well, then... let me bring out a hot guy, and this guy doesn't do anything for you. And she, oh, no, he's attractive. Okay, well, then you find men attractive. That's fine. Because I don't believe that you're not.
So do you think if Hillary listens to this show that's going to sweeten the pot for her?
No.
She's going to be like, I have to come on that show?
No, she's going to be like, I am definitely staying away from that. She'd be like, if I wanted that kind of question, I'd go on the Howard Stern show. And usually, again, I'm sorry to go off, you know, because I swore and I try not to swear. And I don't want to be the Howard Stern show either, but, like, I don't want to talk to Hillary. I don't have any, like, when I listen to her, her voice is shrill, okay? And when she talks...
I think they've been trying to work with her on that, because there's times where she doesn't sound that way, and I think somebody's trying to coach her.
Well, but that's the whole thing. Insincere, coached. When she talks, you don't believe her. I can't remember if it was you or someone else at work, but somebody at work was yelling at me. She was in West Virginia, and she was saying, we got to close these coal plants. Yeah. And then, was that you?
I don't think it was me. I heard that.
We got to close these coal plants. And then when the coal miners are like, well, we don't want to lose our jobs. And she goes, oh, no, I never said shut the coal mines. Yeah, you did. You said no more, that you're green. You don't want any more carbon footprint. I did? No, I said I was for the worker. Well, if you close the coal plants, you'll be putting us out of business. I meant no coal from China. Like, you don't believe anything she said. And I couldn't have an interview with her. You know what I mean? Like, if I thought she was lying, like with the coal plants, I would be like, well, we're going to keep talking about the coal plants. For the next 20 minutes, we're talking about coal plants. No, I think we're done here.
Well, I just thought, since Donald Trump has stiffened us so far...
I think that Donald Trump would be fun. And I don't care what Donald Trump has to say about tariffs. Okay? He already said what he has to say about tariffs. I think he'd be fun to talk about. Like, I want to know about the USFL. And he would be like, well, what do you want to know about the USFL? I think he would be a good interview.
Well, you know what's funny? Did you hear that Donald Trump called Elizabeth Warren? You know who Elizabeth Warren is. He called her Pocahontas. You know, because she said she was a Native American. Yeah. And she's not. Well, and somebody asked Donald Trump if he was going to apologize. And he said, yeah, he goes, I am going to apologize. I apologize to Pocahontas.
Yeah, and right there. That's why I would want Donald Trump on. And even if I disagree, let's put it this way. And I know nobody listening knows who this is, but Justin. Justin lied all the time. We worked with Justin, and we said, what happened yesterday? He goes, oh, I got in an accident, I killed a guy. Right? I'm like, that's horrible. And then after Justin got fired, we found out he didn't kill anybody. He was making up the whole thing. Right? Well, it's the same.
So he didn't get fired for killing a guy. He got fired for lying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he got fired
for lying. He got lying fired about killing a guy.
He got fired for other things. Lying about killing the guy was something different.
That was part on the list.
Yeah, it was part of the streams of lies that he made. But it's the same thing with Donald Trump. Even if Donald Trump is lying, it's funny. It's good. It's good theater. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. If me or you, all we cared about was making ratings, okay? Donald Trump's the perfect guy to have on. He's not the perfect guy to run the country. Holy cow.
You know what Donald Trump is like? He's like one of your smart-ass friends running for president.
Yeah. Yeah, I got this uncle. Uncle Donald is running, and he's a hoot. But no, I'm not voting for him. You would have to be insane to vote for Donald Trump. Ted Coley is voting for Donald Trump. But
Well, now that you said that, do you think he's more likely to come on?
Yes. Well, no, because I would keep it lighter, because I think I want to have a conversation with him, and he would tell us how he'd really feel. He wouldn't pull any of this coal mine crap that Hillary Clinton would pull. Because, like I said, well, what answer do you want to hear so I get elected? That's honestly how I think that she answers things.
And I also told you about how, what was it, Rosie O'Donnell said if Donald Trump gets elected, she's going to leave the country.
Yeah,
and
good.
Donald Trump said, good, now I have to win.
Yeah. Ted, I saw that list of people who are like, if you get elected, we're leaving. It's like, you're not helping the cause. Like, Rosie O'Donnell, she was on a hit talk show, okay? In her mind, she is beloved, okay? I don't think she realizes that most men hate her. Mm-hmm. And that a lot of women don't like her either. I don't think she realizes that her Q score is really low. You know what I mean?
So she's sort of like Hillary.
Yeah. You know, it's like, you remember watching Married with Children back in the day, and they used to make fun of Oprah. Mm-hmm. And all the women are like, we all love Oprah, you gotta understand. Right? I think even Oprah understood that not all men loved her. You know what I mean? I think she understood that, and she played to her base. She wasn't trying to get men to cross over. Right? Rosie O'Donnell and a lot of people who are like, we're going to leave the country if Trump wins, I don't think they realize how unpopular they are outside of New York and L.A. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like Rosie O'Donnell, she's like, oh, people just hate me because I'm a lesbian. I'm like, no, I think people hate you because you're a bad comedian. Like I said, Fred Hunt, why do you like a comedian? Well, because they're funny. Like Tosh.0, you ever watch Daniel Tosh?
Yeah.
He's a funny guy, right? Well, I have never seen anything Rosie O'Donnell's ever done that I laughed at. I thought it was funny. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I never was like, oh boy, Rosie O'Donnell is really funny in that. One time, I thought she was okay in League of Their Own, right?
Yeah.
But she wasn't, you know, she was playing it close to the vest. And that's my whole thing. You are a comedian, you're not funny. That's why I don't like you. Let me pull out the predictions, because I think one of us failed the predictions. Let me.
And I also had one more thing I wanted to bring up too.
Oh, okay.
Now,
well, we'll do this and we'll do that. We'll
okay.
Because we were just talking about Hillary. It says here on show number 3, okay?
Wow, show number 3.
Show number 3 in October of 2015, and this is why I bring it up. 2015, everyone is speculating, show 3, October 2015, Hillary is very beatable. Ted Coley said Hillary will be the Democratic nominee. Fred Hunt said Hillary will be the Democratic nominee. Guess what happened on June 1st?
She is the Democratic nominee.
Yeah. I mean, they were trying to stir up trouble, but I mean, it was like a one-horse race. Mm-hmm. So we can throw out this prediction. I mean, we were both spot on. They're like, who's going to come? All it was, and not to go back to the CNN analogy, but they were trying to drum up competition to move the ratings. There was no competition. Hillary was basically in it start to finish, and Bernie Sanders was like a speed bump. So instead of going from 0 to 100, she ran over an old man, you know, trying to get to her goal. But Ted, we both predicted it. Clear as the day is long. There was never a time where Sanders was like, oh, now Hillary's got to climb back in the lead. You know what I mean? It was always, will Bernie get up enough steep speed?
And that prediction was made
in October of 2015. Both me and you.
That was before any of the primaries or anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how predictable it is.
Yeah.
That's why I said at work, you can make predictions and people are like, oh no, what about Bernie Sanders or what about this guy?
Now, did we make any predictions in October for the Republican nominee?
We're gonna see now because we did that one. I don't know. The other one is either Cavs or Trump. I can't remember which.
I think there was a Cavs prediction back then, too.
Oh, look at this. Back in January, it was the Cavs prediction. On January 22nd, the Cavs fired David Blatt.
Yeah.
Okay?
At basically the exact midpoint of the season, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They fired David Blatt. Joe Kay, now we can make fun of him. I wish he was here so we could see the irony. Joe Kay said they would lose in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh, not even make it to the...
Not even make it. Fred said they would win the finals. And Ted Coley said they would win the championship. And why the prediction was made, it was made on January 22nd. Teams don't win championships when they fire their coach mid-season. Well, like I said, it says right here. Ted, win championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Joe Kay, lose in Eastern Conference Finals.
And what was your prediction?
I put 4-1 finals. I assume finals win because I put it right above you. Maybe I said finals loss. But I thought I put... It says Ted, win championship. I put 4-1 win. I thought so. But Joe said they were going to lose. That was in January. See, you've been confident since January. And why were you confident? Because we had the best player in the league. Even if we didn't have the best record, Ted, we had the best player. And that's why...
Funny. You know what's funny? Golden State, 73-9.
Yeah.
And they lose. And, like, even when New England was 16-0, they lost the Super Bowl. It's like...
A lot of people were comparing us to the, 2007, 2009 Patriots.
Yep.
The team that went 16-0 and lost the championship. It's the same thing.
It's almost like the best record gives you about a 50% chance.
Yeah.
It really doesn't mean anything.
No, it doesn't. And that's why you don't burn yourself out trying to win 73 games. So what else did you want to...
The other thing I wanted to bring up... You heard there's new evidence in the Amy Mihalovic case.
Yes.
Now, I have a question about that. How is a blanket and curtain found with Amy Mihalovic's body new evidence?
I have no idea.
Now, I assume this blanket and curtain were found with her body 26 years ago.
Right.
So they've had it for 26 years. How is that new evidence?
I have no idea.
But that's how it was presented, wasn't it?
Yes. The only thing I can think of, okay, literally, and this is speculation because say we're in court. We're speculating here. 26 years ago, she disappeared in...
89.
89. In 89, nobody was getting DNA tests. The only reason the OJ trial had DNA was because they were in LA and they spent... I think they said that trial cost $5 million or something. Does that sound right?
Oh, I have no idea.
Whatever it was. It was millions of dollars. Okay? Amy Mihalovic was a 12-year-old girl from Bay Village. There's no way they were testing DNA in 1989. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the only thing I can think of is that they reopened the kit because somebody said, well, our kits now only cost $500 to test for DNA. In 1989, it costs $100,000 to run a DNA test. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so now these kits only cost $500, and the reporter was like, well, holy cow, the Bay Village police can now afford a $500 DNA kit. You see what I'm saying? That's the only thing I can think of. I mean, because they didn't find the curtain, and they didn't... What was the other thing?
It was a curtain and a blanket, and I think they said the curtain was homemade.
Yeah, they didn't find either one of those in the last 26 years. So the only thing I could think of is that the price of the DNA kit came down. When they reopened it, they found an eyelash, or they found a hair, or they found semen. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I don't know. Because one of the things they mentioned was that since the curtain is homemade, that way they could, if anybody knows of somebody who, handmade curtains or, that narrows things down. But it's why weren't they thinking about this 5, 10, 15,
26,
or,
even 1 year ago.
Yeah. Why is it like, hey, you know what? I just thought of something. Those things that were recovered with their body, that might be evidence. It's like,
McFly, hello. Yeah.
I mean, I hope it, solves the case, but it's like, I'm like, why wasn't this?
Yeah. Well, remind me, because we're going to talk more about, I want to talk more about that too, because I'm like, I read the Cleveland.com article about Amy Mahalovic, and they're like, there's new evidence. And that was it. And they didn't even say any, they did say something about the curtain, but what was the other thing? I forgot already.
Blanket, I think?
The blanket. They didn't even say anything about a blanket in the article. They're like, new evidence, end of sentence. What's the new evidence? You're the one writing a story. There's new evidence. Well, what's the new evidence? Well, we wrote a story that there is new. Listen to me closer. What is the new evidence? You know what I mean? Like, they're only telling you part of the story.
Now, I don't know if that's, like, nationally, if people know that
Well, the only
story.
other thing...
I know it's a big story here.
I read an article in the Scene magazine, right? It was a couple of years ago, and the author, his name was James Renner, and that guy, he seemed like he was like working 24 hours a day trying to find the killer of Amy Mahalovic. Mm-hmm. And he thinks he had it solved. And he even named in the Scene magazine who he thought it was, right? So the only thing I could think of, if they're like, oh, there's new evidence, maybe, and I don't know the guy's name, but we'll just say Mr. Smith, okay, just generic, or John Doe. We'll say John Doe, right? Maybe John Doe knows we're hot on his trail, and if he turns himself in, well, guess what? If he didn't turn himself in 26 years, he's not going to, and I don't blame James Renner, right? I'm saying maybe the police is leaking there's new evidence because this guy thinks they're hot on his trail, and they want him to turn himself in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, it's like, well, if he didn't turn himself in by now, he ain't turning himself in. Oh, no, they have new evidence. Woo! You know, the guy who James Renner thought it was in the Scene article, again, this was 5-10 years ago. If I remember right, he moved down south. And he told James Renner, quit following me around. I'll call the cops and have you arrested. But the guy who wrote the story, he was like meticulous. He was like crazy meticulous. I'm like, this guy missed his calling. He should be solving crimes.
Well, you know what pissed me off is I'm trying to think. The parade, I think, was Wednesday.
Right.
And then Thursday morning is when they broke that news.
Yeah.
So Thursday afternoon, I'm looking forward, for once, to listening to Trevisano.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking maybe he'll
mention
it.
No,
he's still talking about the parade.
Yeah.
From the day before, you know, where everybody on Earth was talking about that.
Because he's a dork. And I started with the parade, so I apologize. Maybe one day me and you will take his job. We can make fun of Trevisano. I told my wife we'd be done by 9. It's 9:05. We better bug. Ted, we're back in your dining room or your living room studio. Thank you so much for letting me come over.
No,
this is Beacon of Speech. If you want to reach us, it's beaconofspeech@gmail.com. We have
Donald Trump, please respond.
We are actually getting more listeners. They might be teenagers, but they're still listening. Come be on our show.
Did you hear Donald Trump? We had 14 listeners.
Yes. Hillary Clinton, I don't want her. I don't want to talk to her.
Gary Johnson?
Gary Johnson, I will talk to you if you don't make fun of me for having a rinky-dink operation.
But between Gary Johnson and Gary Busey, you would rather have Gary Busey.
I'd rather have Gary Busey. Gary Busey would be more fun. But I am voting for Gary Johnson. And if you go to the Beacon of Speech website, the new article posted on the blog is how Gary Johnson wins. All right, Ted, I got to go. You got to go. One last thing. We always have a song of the day. I am going to try something different.
Is it a Billy Joel song?
No. My cousin, Michael Moorman, he did an album 10 years ago. I think I'm going to make the song of the day one of Michael Moorman's songs, and then I'm going to tack it on to the end. So you'll actually get to hear music at the end of the webcast. Trust me, I'll let you listen to the song later, too.
Sam was a cocaine junkie. The problem being he always had the money. Well, it took getting fired from work. It took not having a home or knowing where to look. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Mary couldn't shake a bad cold, blaming it on just getting old. Well, it took until pneumonia came. It took till then to realize it was her hectic life driving her insane. Cause sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Joey was a spoiled baseball star until that is he got drunk and wrecked his car. Well, it took getting wheelchair bound. It took that to learn what he lost and what he found. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Yeah, sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Oh, sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Well, sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything that you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes being right is knowing you're wrong. Sometimes that's what it takes, losing everything you have at stake. Because sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong. Sometimes you gotta be weak. Sometimes you gotta be weak. Sometimes you gotta be weak to be strong.